Good evening from Swansea, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are watching Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. It is a Thursday. We're going to be talking about AEW Dynamite. Apologies, we're a couple of minutes late. Been a very, very hectic day, but we are here now. We're talking some AEW, and I am very, very excited to do so alongside David Sheldon, the reviewer for AEW here at Wrestling Republic. How are you, David?
Hello, everybody. Very, very excited to be here to talk AEW Dynamite. Before we begin, I want to start on some sort of more somber news. I wanted to pay tribute to Steve Mongo McMichael, who was announced to have passed away last night. Obviously, had a several-year battle with the horrible disease of ALS, and sending condolences to the family. Steve McMichael first got his start. I obviously very famed professional footballer. I don't follow professional football, so I'm going to speak more on the wrestling side of things. Began ringside for the Bam Bam Bigelow Lawrence Taylor match, which I didn't know until very, very recently. That was his first appearance. Then did commentary for WWF. Then moved over and did commentary for WCW, and then of course became a member of the Four Horsemen for a good amount of couple of years. I think 3 years. An amazing career both in football and in wrestling, and he will be missed greatly. So rest in peace to Steve Mongo McMichael, and again, condolences to the family and all involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. We hope everybody, all his friends and family, we wish you all the best in this very difficult time. I Make Beat says, Sup, Ben. Enjoyed watching WrestleMania with you last weekend, sir. Thank you very much for tuning in. Of course, those watch alongs were very, very fun indeed. Fernando's in the chat as well. It's time to light the fuse and ignite this very explosive dynamite. Very well. You're a poet and you don't know it. Just Apart says 100%. Numero 1 says, hello, bit of a random question, but what are your thoughts on the Baldy match between Mark and Ricochet? It was fun. In fact, you know what, David, out of the gate, what were your thoughts on it?
It was fun. It was very fun. I enjoyed it greatly. I don't think there was I didn't rate a single match on this show below 4 stars. I thought it was a fantastic episode of Dynamite from an in-ring perspective. I thought it was great. The finish, I was basic, but they got such good chemistry, and they were really, really brilliant. So top class from both men, and great to see that mid card on Dynamite be really fleshed out with so many different names that can plug and play to always guarantee you a great match.
Why do you reckon it was that Ricochet lost? Because that was the one part which really did surprise me during it.
I think because you needed to give Mark Briscoe a win, because he loses,
That's true.
He's beaten more than egg whites. He needs if you're going to build a competitive mid-card division, I don't think Mark Briscoe and Ricochet should be massively apart. I don't think Mark Briscoe should become jobber to the stars. He's too good to be jobber to the stars. He was Ring of Honor World Champion, had a fantastic reign as Ring of Honor World Champion. So as much as I think, it was a cheap win, not a cheap win, but I mean, it was a tactical win. I think that builds to rematches. It builds to tag matches. It just builds up. I don't think Ricochet needs to keep winning. I think he's had his share, and I'm happy to see Briscoe get a win to even those odds a little bit.
Well, there we are. Fair point. I can't really disagree with that. But now let's get into the opening topic, one which I'm very excited to be talking about, because FTR have a manager, and he is Stokely. And of course, he's kind of been working behind the scenes in AEW a little bit as of late. They've made that clear on Ring of Honor. He's like the general manager or co-general manager or whatever it is. As well. So it does seem like they're making him almost like Paul Heyman of AEW, where he does have backstage pull. He can control certain things, and he came out and he said, FTR, your suspension is lifted, and he is now their manager. He is representing him, the agent, I think he called himself. And honestly, I think this is a great partnership, and I am excited for it. David, what are your thoughts on this out of the gates?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I really enjoyed this segment. I really like heel FTR. I think heel FTR are far more interesting than babyface FTR. And I think that adding Stokely is a stroke of genius, because Stokely Hathaway is one of the best managers in the business. We've seen that so many times with Cargill and then with Statlander and all the rest of it. He is so brilliant at what he does. And to be honest with you, the points that he made in the segment were entirely correct. Why is it that FTR, it's hypocritical that FTR get suspended for pushing over Tony Schiavone, and yet Darby Allin is able to set people on fire, and Hangman Page gets to burn people's houses down and they're rewarded with pay-per-view main events? That is very, very true, and kind of a damning indictment on the kayfabe management at AEW. As soon as the Rock and Roll Express were shown in the crowd, you knew they were coming up, and you knew they were probably going to get beaten down. Why do they bother buying tickets? Because every time they do, they end up on the floor. But it was a nice segment. I enjoyed the back and forth between them. The Rock and Roll Express, I said this in my review, they can still go in the ring. You watched them over Mania weekend. They had some good matches, hitting Canadian destroyers and the like, and they took a phenomenal pile driver. So my prediction is I do think we're building it. We are going to have, as a Dynamite match, FTR versus Rock and Roll Express, and FTR will kill them. And we'll make an example of them, and it'll be a fun little nostalgia throwback match. I've got no problem with that. And I think that it'll be a really, really fun sort of first step for this new heel FTR. I think the ultimate goal is the tag titles. Problem is, tag titles are currently on the Hurt Syndicate. And those teams don't currently gel. I think that if the MJF story, which we'll get to later, can expand, I think they can become kind of cool tweeners. Sheldon and Lashley, which I think can then build the kind of build that kind of match with FTR, because FTR will go in as heels, and then Lashley and Shelton as tweeners. And I think that'll be a really, really cool sort of back and forth dynamic there, maybe later down the line. But for now, I think really good segment, and lovely to see Stokely with FTR. And I really would say, I do think, put the two together and have FTR versus Rock and Roll Express, and really cement, because FTR want to do it. So let them have their fun.
Fair enough. I don't know. I mean, I always feel uncomfortable about complaining when legends wrestle, right? Because they are legends. What they have done for this business is absolutely incredible. But I don't know. Because part of me feels like they should be allowed to do it because they've earned that right. But the other part of me goes, they can't really go anymore, can they? I saw them at Defy, and I was like,
I think they can. I don't think they're enough to, they're not going to go 20 minutes for the tag titles, but they can throw a couple of punches and hit a pile driver, and then FTR come back and kill them dead. If it's
a couple of minute thing, I'll be okay with it. They'll go 20 minutes. They'll go 20 minutes.
If we're looking at a 15-minute main event, no, of course not. You're insane.
They'll do it. I'm telling you, they'll do it.
I saw them several times through the week. I know I saw them at Defy. I saw them at other shows as well, and results vary. They're not Osprey, but they can do sort of the basic stuff, particularly with FTR, who are kind of the masters at that style of wrestling. And if FTR are trying to be the Midnight Express, which it seems like they are, then you've got to go down the Rock and Roll Express route as well. And you've got them there while they can still go, sort of a swan. To be honest with you, it would be great if that would be. I don't want to say this. If FTR were to retire the Rock and Roll Express on AEW Dynamite, that's a good story.
If it's their last match,
and they kind of take on the Legend Killers type thing of, we're going to be. We're no longer content with competing with those sins of the past. We're going to be the one true version of it, and we're going to kill each and every one of you, which then leads to FTR versus Edge and Christian.
I'm down for that.
To then finish that story of the legendary team, beats the Rock and Roll Express, beats one of the team. The Hardys are in TNA, but I can't do that. Who else we got? What other legendary tag teams are still going? God, there aren't many, are there?
There aren't.
The Dudleys, can they still walk?
They're in cahoots with WWE.
And they're in cahoots with WWE. There's nobody, maybe not. Maybe just do the Rock and Roll Express and then bring them back. But it looks like we're, we've obviously got the Christian Nick Wayne thing, which is I think is really interesting.
Yeah,
right
I was a fan of that segment last night, by the way, too.
Yeah.
Christian is going a little bit more babyface now, too, with him actually giving Nick Wayne the title and putting him on that around his shoulder. He's slowly transitioning, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think we are building to that all in, I'd imagine, probably FTR, Edge, and Christian. I'd be amazed if they don't. All the pieces are falling nicely for that, and I'm a big fan of all of it. To be honest with you, I've got nothing negative to say on this show particularly.
I'll make up for it. I don't either.
No, I can say I said in my review, I had a couple of things. I thought Queen Aminata's promo was a bit stiff for Tony Storm's backstage bit, but when I'm getting to that level of nitpicky for I was up and down the card going good, very good, very good, very good, very good, very good. And like I said, yeah, it's really highly rated episode of Dynamite, 2 weeks in a row, really highly rated. And just generally, I do think that there is the depth of talent in this roster is becoming more and more apparent by the week, because this week was just a bunch of tag match, we had 2 tag matches with just some of the best wrestlers in the world just wrestling, which we'll get onto one of those in a second. Then you had, your opener and your main event, some of the best wrestlers. The opening segment, which had nearly every big wrestler they have, Bucks, Okada, Omega, Swerve, Joe, Cobbs, what's his name? What's the rapper?
I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I'd never heard of him, but it's the one who goes, make him say whatever.
Yeah.
I have heard that. I just like the meme and stuff, but I'd never heard his name.
I simply wrote in my review, I am uncultured, and I left it there. Because I'm not going to be one. I didn't know who, as I keep going back to, I didn't know who Bad Bunny was. I'd never heard of him.
To be fair, he's not big in the UK. He isn't at all. Master P.
Master P.
I Make Beats says, Fernando says Coben Christian is near, and I am sure for it. Absolutely. Numero 1 says, if they do FTR versus Rock and Roll Express, I want to see FTR come out as Rock and Roll Express and just make fun of them.
It's a nice idea. I don't think that's really FTR's game, though. I
no,
like the
it's
idea.
Not, but I like it.
Do you know who I would have come out and take the mic potentially if they do decide to go down the road? Is Edge and Christian, because that is the type of thing that Edge and Christian would have done as a tag team. Benefit of those with flash photography and all the rest of it. That would be the type of thing they would do. It's not the type of thing that I think FTR would do. They did do bits of it in WWE, but that's because they didn't know what they were doing with FTR in WWE. I don't really think we've seen that in AEW, so I prefer to keep this more serious. But I really like the idea, I don't think it suits the gimmick.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Calf KK, shout out to you as well in the comments. David Marge says FTR are my AEW favorite. They're a great favorite to have, no doubt about it. And the one thing I will say as well, very much agreeing with numero 1 on this, Stokely should be featured more on TV. He is absolutely fantastic, and I'm glad he's now getting this opportunity, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Look, I'm going to be frankly honest. I've said this before. I wasn't the biggest fan of Jade Cargill in AEW. I wasn't. I made that clear at the time. But the one thing that I think really gave her additional aura was Stokely Hathaway, because he is so good at his job. He was brilliant in, was it Malcolm Bivens? Was that his name in WWE?
That was it. Yeah. I forgot about that.
He was brilliant in WWE. I was baffled when they released him. I was so baffled, because I thought there are so many people you can pair him up with instantly and he will make them bigger. He is, to me, you have, in my opinion, outside of Heyman, obviously in WWE, nearly all of the other best managers in the world are all in AEW. You've got Don Callis, Prince Nana, you've got Stokely, and I'm just going up and down the list. I'm like, wow, they've got some proper managerial talent there in AEW.
They really, really do. And I'm excited to see what is next. Fernando is agreeing as well. It is going to be exciting. But talking about exciting, last night, you briefly touched upon it, David. But the Young Bucks versus Nia and Bayley. I mean, listen, if you like fun wrestling, this was exactly that. It was fun and it was wrestling. It was wrestling and it was fun. It was brilliant. What were your thoughts, David?
Oh, I love this so much. I loved this so much. Look, I love the Young Bucks. I always have. I never, I love them when they were the heels. I love them when they're faces. I just think they're great. And I do think sometimes they go over the top, but I think for the most part they're great. I love Speedball Mike Bailey. I love Kevin Knight. Put them all together in a nice little pot on the Young Bucks return, and you get some of the most crazy wrestling you'll see all year. I absolutely loved this. I was watching it, and it reached a point I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Like, no surprise, but this is really good. And then Bailey and the Bucks started doing like super kick karate offs in the ring, and I did kind of go, ooh! And then by the end, I love this so much. I know this is not particularly brilliant analysis. The thing is, like, you can't, when I was looking at my review scores, the storyline isn't really there. I thought they told a solid story in the match with kind of what they had, which is very little. But ultimately, it was just a massive spot fest. And But it's one of the best tag team spot fests I can recall in years, to be honest. I think for a sort of a random Dynamite match that, like I said, I found out about last week, I loved this to pieces. And I would like to see this type of match on every single AEW card going forward. Not at this not at this level it'll get. Otherwise, you'll burn it out. But I just like the idea of this level of competition every week. And I've seen, I've looked around. Everybody seems to be in agreement. The match was fantastic, which is great news. I'd be interesting to know, Ben, what you felt of this properly. And the reason I say that is that I'm not sure this is your kind of wrestling, because the story was fairly limited. It was great fun, and it was like impeccably wrestled, brilliantly innovative. But I did watch it thinking this is going to be a lot more my thing than it will be yours. And I could see the matches you'd be more interested in. I don't think this one would have been.
Right, so that was literally leading to the point I was about to say, where this undoubtedly very, very, very fun, but kind of brought me and kind of was the big issue of this entire episode of AEW Dynamite. Storyline-wise, there wasn't much there. Wrestling-wise, it was really, really, really good. But again, like I always say, for me in wrestling, story is king. That's what I ultimately do care about. Now, I can have some fun, and this was fun. I did enjoy this match. But throughout the card, it kind of did feel like there was just quite a lot of matches which were wrestling for wrestling's sake without necessarily much of a story.
Yeah. Well, it's the reason why I didn't, I didn't obviously give this show full marks in story department, because I actually felt like all the stories they told between the matches were excellent. I thought the stuff in the opening segment, I love the fact they've given Samoa Joe, Moxley this Achilles heel of the choke. I think that's really good storytelling, like genuinely genius storytelling. Love the stuff with Tony Storm, love the stuff with the Owen Hart Cup, love the stuff with MJF, loved all of those things. So I was, I love all these little interactions, MJF and Hangman again, and all these little kind of peppered through stories. But ultimately, the wrestling was a really, really fun match with a bit of story afterwards. A bit of advancement afterwards. I'm more than happy with that. That's my jam. I just want to watch good wrestling and get the story advancement between those matches. But I get if you struggle to invest in wrestling, if there isn't that story to go with it, which I know is more the case with you than it is for me, then 100% I completely, like I said, I thought it as the match was happening. But I was pretty obsessed over how brilliant this was. But I did sort of have to mark it down in the end, because there wasn't that there is story there if you look at what's happened before, what's happened afterwards, but not enough.
And I'm going to be honest, like I did feel it about this a little bit, but the Young Bucks have just, returned. You're kind of building them up again. I understand that. If I'm being completely fully honest, we mentioned it earlier, Mark Briscoe and Ricochet, I almost had a bit more of an issue with that. Like, I don't know if I'm missing something here. I didn't really understand why they were wrestling.
They've wrestled over several weeks. They were in the 8-man tag. I think it was 2 weeks ago. They're kind of just they've kind of got these mid-card things where it's like these guys are fighting these guys, and they're going to go in various combinations, and they're going to do really good wrestling until it stops. And again, I marked that match down because I thought that match, I gave it full marks for fundamentals. I thought there was no problems there. I thought the psychology of it was really good. No problems there. Again, it was a storytelling problem. And that's why when I came to do my final grade of the show, even though I'd rated all of the story segments really high, FTR was 4.25, the MJF segment was 4.25. The opening segment was 3.5, only because it wasn't much of a promo. I thought the actual segment was a lot better than that. I thought the segment was actually brilliant, but I was rating the promo. And so I was up and down the card going, this is great, this is great, this is great, this is great. But I couldn't, because I was like, well, I've marked all these matches down for lack of story, so I can't. But I think that the Josh Alexander tag match, the Alexander and Takeshita versus Brody King and Ospreay, did have a level of storytelling through its psychology.
That one did a bit more,
with Ospreay.
I honestly preferred that tag to this one, I think.
Oh, and again, that's entirely fair. I gave that. To be fair, I gave that match 4.25 as well, I think. I've lost my mic. Sorry, move my leg and the whole mic goes. But no, like I said, that match was excellent, and I loved the dynamic between the difference in dynamic between Brody and Will. and Takeshita and Alexander, because Brody and Will couldn't quite get on the same page, even as two baby faces. Takeshita and Alexander worked more as a team, and they won. Like, I love the bit where Brody King just chops him, instead of the which counts as a tag. I thought it was really fun, and the wrestling was great as well. But so yeah, like I said, talking on the two tag matches, I preferred this one from a wrestling perspective. But
I'd agree with that too, to be clear. But I was just more invested, cared more about the other.
And that's entirely fair. That is entirely fair. Just quickly before we move on, what do you think is next for Josh? Where do you think we go from here? Because he's obviously lost to Hangman. Now he's got a big win here over Brody.
I don't like it. I don't like him in this faction because the faction is so ridiculously stacked that I just don't think he's going to shine necessarily in it. I mean, it will guarantee he's on TV a bit. So I guess that's a bonus. But I just think, like, Josh Alexander's fantastic. And me and Archie were talking about this last week, actually. But while Josh Alexander is fantastic, I mean, you're in a faction with Takeshita. I mean, it's really, really difficult to overshadow him.
I think I probably would have given Alexander his own faction, to be honest, because I like the fact that AEW are always full of factions. I like that. Since the day one of AEW, I've loved that about the company, that it's always been these different groups of people. So I like Alexander in the group because I like the quality of wrestler in the Don Callis family. But I don't agree. I don't think that Josh Alexander coming in as this big heel, he should be heel. I think he's a better heel than he is a face.
Wow, that's a hot take.
I do. I love him as both, but I think that he's more interesting as a heel because I find him a little bit. Sometimes I find him really easy to root for, and other times I do want to boo him. So I think and that's a testament, I think, to how good he is. That when he does go heel, it was him and Santana had their in Alexander's last feud in TNA, and I wanted to see Alexander get his handed to him. I wanted to watch him get chaired, and I wanted to see him get, because that's how good Santana is as a face, but it's also how good Alexander is as a heel. So I like him either side of the dynamic, but I like him coming in as a heel. I do like that, especially with Mike Bailey coming in as a face. I would have given him his own faction. Who with, I don't know. But
do you know what you could have done, though, to be honest? You could have genuinely have done Josh Alexander, Mike Bailey, and Kevin Knight all come in together from TNA as a faction together with them being a tag team and him being like the solo star, because as we saw today, they can work really well as a team.
My feeling is, I have a feeling it would have made some of them a little bit less interesting as characters. As wrestlers, yes. But I don't see a character link between Josh Alexander and Mike Bailey.
No, there isn't, other than they were both in TNA and they decided to come over together.
And and so, and I think that the Kevin Knight one, I think, again, Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey, yes. But I could even see Kevin Knight and Josh Alexander. I can see that more. It's that one that's bugging me, is the Bailey-Alexander combination.
Or maybe you can tease that and you can eventually have Alexander turn on Bailey or something like that because of the tensions.
That's entirely fair. I think that I'm not going to complain exactly with what they do, because so far we've had a really good match against Hangman Page and a really good tag match here. So, he's on TV, he's being used, and he is in a prominent position. But I agree, I think there are better ways they could have gone about this in the way that they have. But I'm not angry with the way that they've gone.
Yeah, I'll agree on that one too, right? Because he's at least on TV. Fernando says, agree, there are too many people in the Don Callis family. Numero 1 says, I want Josh Alexander to get involved with the TNT Championship. Absolutely. Fernando says something I completely agree with. Kevin Knight is amazing. He is quickly becoming one of his favorites in AEW. And I Make Beat says, Alexander is fantastic. I'm sure he can get some traction. So I'm sure once he gets some traction, he will shine. There's tournaments he can show out, and that is certainly true. And he can go after singles gold, and there's potential feuds there as well. I mean, I know we've just...
Sorry, I was going to say one more thing. I would have, if they're not going to do anything massive with it in the next few months, I would have Alexander be AEW's. They always have one in the G1. There's always one wrestler from AEW that goes over to the G1. And that would be mine. This time round, we've got Nick Wayne in the Super Juniors. I'd have Josh Alexander in the G1. And I think if you know they had Takeshita last year, I don't think they'll bring Takeshita back second year. They might because he's so over in Japan.
I'd love it if they did that.
But
to be honest, I wouldn't complain about that either.
But I could see them just going, well, here's somebody new. Stick Josh Alexander in there and let him go to war with everybody there. I don't think the G1 is going to be as stacked as it usually is in terms of, you know, I think they're going to need people like Takeshita to come in as well.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, why not? Do Alexander?
Do you know who I want to see?
Yeah, go on.
Kyle Fletcher. Because I reckon they really could send him and be fine for a month without him. And I really do think he would show out in that environment.
I agree. I'd also, look, there are loads of people I'd like to see wrestling. And I want to see Hechicero in the G1 as well. But, you know, I want to see, who else we got? I want to see not Leon Slater, Luke Jacobs in the G1. But, you know, with all these different partnerships. But I think the most likely option is going to be an AEW talent, and it's probably going to be, I would say, Takeshita or Josh Alexander.
That's, I mean, well, technically Forbidden Doors after that, so they will still have the relationship then. But, I mean, listen, if Luke Jacobs is there, I'm almost more convinced on saying he's coming from WWE at this point. And I don't want to see a WWE New Japan partnership. I don't want to see it. I'm adamant about it. I think they might have one foot out the door with this AEW stuff.
Oh no! Let's see how the AAA one goes first. They're so confident in AAA's roster. They only gave one talent. Look at our amazing talents of Vikingo. Anyway, look how amazing Vikingo is, guys. Who's the world champion? Doesn't matter who the world champion is. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that JBL was on the last show talking about. Who? No, it's just Vikingo. Just Vikingo's all we want.
Oh gosh. But anyway,
fully agree. Before we move on, fully agree with what I Make Beat said about Takeshita owning the G1 last year.
He did.
When he owned the
He was
G1.
the MVP.
He genuinely had one of the best runs, possibly, maybe probably not the best run, but one of the best runs ever in a G1. I'd say every match was up there, and there was no dead spots at all. And that match with ELP is still one of the best G1 matches I have ever watched.
Yep, I cannot disagree at all. And I watched every match in last year's G1. And star rating wise, it was like as well. I did the averages. I'll actually try and get that up after the next segment. But before we do, let me talk to you guys a little bit about Etsy. Now, if you guys don't know what Etsy is, well, where have you guys been? Basically, myself or Clark hop on there every weekend, and we do a stream. Well, almost every weekend, we do a stream. And on there, you guys can join. You can chat with us. You can put your cameras on if you want to. If you just want to have your audio on, you can do that too. Or if you want to do it just like YouTube, you can comment along on there as well. But it's basically just a discussion. It's not recorded. It's not like a podcast or anything. It really just is like kind of more like a chat. You can argue with us about things if you disagree with any opinions. It's very, very fun. It's always enjoyable. A few other wrestling content creators are on there too, which we're big fans of. Big Ann from Ant University, Wrestling Takes as well. Some really, really fun content creators that we love to work with as well. And also might be coming on the Wrestling Public Daily broadcast now and again soon as well, which is always fun to have some guest appearances. But make sure you guys download the Etsy app on the App Store or Google Play Store and head to the upcoming stream section to do that. Great app, great people. Now, up next, let's talk about Bobby Lashley, because Bobby Lashley, well, he did a little bit of a trick to MJF, didn't he? He wanted to see the car which MJF was offering him to, try and buy his way into the Hurt Syndicate. And he gives him the keys and he just drives off. MJF was fuming. He basically just committed a crime on national television. They did nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. But do you know what, David? That wasn't my issue with this segment. I really enjoyed the segment, but my one issue, and it's so nitpicking, and every company does this under the sun. It's not an AEW thing, but why on earth did the camera cut to MJF arriving at the arena while Bobby Lashley was talking? Has MJF paid off the cameraman or something to do that? Because otherwise, it doesn't really make much sense, does it? What's your thoughts on it all, David?
Oh no, I'm falling for the company propaganda. I'm not even noticing it anymore. I'm so used to the wrestling. I've watched so much wrestling. No, I wanted to really praise this segment, just as a from an analysis perspective, because I like to analyze segments. I like to sort of look at how they're constructed, and this is a segment that very much feels like it was straight out of the Attitude Era, just without any of the racism or sexism. This was a really well constructed piece of wrestling TV, like I said, straight out the Attitude Era, that mindset, straight through the Ruthless Aggression as well, where you have an object, say this is the car, and you've just built your whole segment around that. Simple setup, simple punchline. I loved the MVP sort of catching himself early on, feeling like he'd maybe gone a bit too harsh on Gates of Agony, and so pulling back into, no, they're great competitors, really good putting them over and remembering to put them over. That's why MVP is one of the best in the business. Then MJF comes out. I love the Shelton thumbs up. We're advancing. It's a segment that's advancing every week. I didn't like the whole giving them women last week. I thought it was a bit icky. But the thing is that the segments are advancing week to week, and I really enjoyed that we're now advancing. We have a yes from Shelton. Now it's just Bobby. And I think this is going to end with them turning on MJF. I'm going to have MJF and Lashley. But the construction of, MJF basically talking himself into his own problems. And I love the bait and switch of Bobby going to do it, and then the thumbs down at the end. I thought it was hilarious. MJF's acting was brilliant. Lashley was clearly having a ball. And it was just, really well acted, really entertaining. It is a crime. So was burning somebody's house down. It's kind of just, it's wrestling. I go with it. So was Austin destroying Vince's car. So was any of those things. Like, whatever. It's wrestling. It's television. I'm happy to just go with it. But like I said, I just thought this was a really well constructed A, bit of comedy, and B, bit of drama. It's a well constructed bit of comedy because, again, setup, execution, punchline. But sorry, I got that wrong. Setup, development of setup, punchline. That's the rule. Got my words mixed up there. But from a dramatic perspective, it makes sense. It advances the previous weeks. And I do think we are going to end with a betrayal of, I think, Bobby. I could see Bobby doing the Batista thing, where Bobby does the bang and clocks him and does sort of like I said, are you not entertained? It probably is. Oh, it's going to be a thumbs up, but not for you, isn't it? That's what it's going to be.
That's what it's going to be.
It's going to be a thumbs up, but not for you. It's for Cedric, and that'll be fun. I'll enjoy it.
Aaron Cankurt Live is saying hi over on Instagram. Hello to you. He's saying, if you could hire one superstar right now, who would it be? To any promotion, I'd say Rio from the UK. She is brilliant. I'm a big fan.
I would go, one wrestler from anywhere. Zara Zaka is already
Yeah.
I mean, she's already unevolved, but I would say Zara Zaka, that's one, with a massive shout out to man like Darice, who's always been my answer usually. So I'm going to say Zara Zaka with man like Darice as my my other option. I'm giving you two. Giving you two for the price of one.
So I'm a Beat says Bobby stealing the car was too funny, but there's a few conspiracies going around. Bobby Lashley is now clearly a thief. He stole the car. So the question is, what's he going to steal next? Numero one suggesting, is he going to steal MJF's hair while he's sleeping? Will Bobby Lashley come in with a full set of hair next week on Dynamite?
Oh, do a hair versus hair match that Bobby wins. No, the MJF wins. No, sorry. Hair versus hair match. The MJF wins. What?
Oh, I love Numero One's comments. I really, really do. Fernando says it was a fun segment. It absolutely was. Up next, let's talk about something else which was fun. The main event. I mean, listen. Jamie Hayter, always fun to watch. Chris Statlander, always fun to watch. Do I think they could put on a better match than this? Yes. But was this still an absolute blast? Absolutely. I enjoyed it. And Jamie Hayter now advances to the finals where she will be facing Mercedes Moné in the Owen Hart Cup tournament. David, firstly, what were your thoughts on this match? But secondly, who do you think is going to be winning that final?
Well, I'll start on the match. I thought the match was great. And I think that Jamie Hayter's had a very sort of weird trajectory since coming back at All In last year. Came back on the 0 hour and then has done very little since of any real note or traction. And we've complained, she had a never-ending feud. Was it Penelope Ford she feuded with for 3 to 5 business years? And then she's kind of bounced around, done some interesting bits variously around the show, but nothing concrete. And this has been a really good concrete run for her, and I really like this match. I think this is probably her best match since she's come back, which, I don't want to skew negative, but it was a very good match. I don't think it was a masterpiece or anything, but I don't think the Hayter's had that match since she's come back. And I think this is what, through really not really the opportunities to, and I think it was a great opportunity for her to show that she did very well. I think that this main event is really interesting because I think either woman could conceivably win it. I think Mercedes could win it, or I think Jamie Hayter could win it. I think Hayter is going to win it because I think there's more mileage in the Jamie Hayter versus Toni Storm match in terms of the history of everything. Obviously, Storm putting Hayter on the shelf, which is a story that we never told, weirdly, when she came back. And I'm really surprised about that. We never went there, even though it was right there to do it, because in the time between Jamie being off and her coming back, Toni had exploded into this massive babyface. I don't think they wanted to touch it, really. But now they can touch it. I think they've got enough mileage in that dynamic that they can touch it. I think if that's the case, Hayter might turn in, like even more kind of nasty, and sort of go down the really sort of horrible route. She was being quite sarky in the match because it was Jamie Hayter's birthday. So happy birthday to Jamie Hayter for yesterday, and she was singing happy birthday to herself through the picture-in-picture, which was very funny. But Hayter is very much going down the heel road of this. So I think go with that Hayter Storm. Hayter as the heel, Storm as the face. I think Monet could still be attacked by Athena, and it could well be Athena Mercedes again at all in. Yes, please to that, please and thank yous. But I also think that Mercedes versus Toni is the biggest match that AEW have right now. And if you want to build a massive supercard to try and get the punters in with some, I believe, struggling ticket sales for a stadium, then it may have to be Toni Mercedes. That'll be a big match for the poster. So I think what excites me is that I can make a case for either woman. And what I hope they don't do in the next couple of weeks before Double or Nothing is telegraph who's going to win. Because sometimes it only takes one segment to not quite go right, or one thing to skew one thing the other way, and you can kind of cotton on to where they're going. I like where we currently are. Same, to be honest, with the inevitable, I'd imagine Hangman Ospreay.
Yeah,
I think Hangman's going to beat Kel Fletcher, and I think it will be Hangman Ospreay in the final. Both of those matches, you can make a case either way. I'm fairly certain Ospreay will win, and it will be Ospreay versus Moxley at All In. But you've also got the Hangman Moxley story.
Yeah.
From that was so good in 2022, 2023, 2020, both, I think. 2023.
I can't keep track of the years, honestly. I thought it was 2016 yesterday.
But yeah, so I think, also the great thing about these finals, if Hangman wins, which he's going to, isn't he? He's going to beat Fletcher, surely.
Oh yeah, that match he's going to win, but yeah.
So you're then going in with two finals where conceivably both guys could win, and I think that is
ideal. A
really good way to do, because so often in these tournaments you hit a certain point and you go, well, I can kind of gather where we're going here, but so it's a problem with the Elimination Chamber most years is we know exactly where they're going, and so you kind of just sit there going, oh. But this time, I think, like I said, there are many, many ways they could go, and I think that's fantastic.
Well, there's approximately 50 seconds of the show left. I think there's still time for a rant from me, right? And what I'm going to say about this situation, David, is if Mercedes Moné loses the final against Jamie Hayter, I am going to be fuming. It is going to be absolutely idiotic booking, because if the plan was to do Athena versus Moné at All In, which, by the way, I'd 100% be all for, then Athena undoubtedly should have won. It should be her going to the final and then Hayter beating her. There we are. You've set it up. It is perfect. The only person to beat Mercedes Moné in AEW. There's a lot you can do there. That would be an exceptional storyline. That would feel like a big deal, an all-in moment, if you will. but instead you had her lose. You had Athena lose. So quite frankly, I think Mercedes Moné has to win this, and I think she will win this. And you are right, David, as well. Monet versus Storm. That is a Monet match. Ha ha ha. Which would sell some tickets. Ewan is saying, is David preparing for the semi-final of the quiz? He needs you to get a dub. Ewan's Welsh as well, David.
The mighty Welsh will triumph. I promise you that. It's a David Sheldon promise for you. That's probably a very silly Welsh accent, so I'm going to go back to my normal Welsh accent and say that I'm still going to win.
Oh gosh, I Beat says yes. Mercedes should win every belt, says Shard. Can't disagree with you there. Numero 1 says, can't wait to see Jamie versus Mercedes. A match I thought was going to happen All In, but will happen at Double or Nothing. Should be a very fun match. No doubt about it. And Beats goes, yeah, boy, just got Welsher. But
I did. Talk tighty like I do.
Oh. On that note, guys, it's the end of the show. Thank you so much. Do you know how often I've done this, right? I've done this show for 2 years now. I still can't point in the direction of the camera. Thank you so much to David for joining me here today. And thank you to everybody throughout in the comments as well. We really do appreciate you guys watching. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow to talk about some news in professional wrestling. We'll see you guys then. Peace.